you, Ceann Comhairle. Today we're discussing if Ireland should opt into the EU Migration Pact. Now, the pact itself contains extremely detailed requirements on all member states within its legislative proposals, and it specifies how the entire system would operate across the EU. These are very detailed documents, and yet we have not discussed in the detail necessary the requirements and obligations on Ireland if we do opt in. Surely, Minister, before we opt in to any or all of these regulations, we should at the very least examine each legislative proposal in detail, tease out the implications, the pluses and the minuses. Yet we haven't had that kind of scrutiny, that kind of analysis in this House, so that we can be sure we're going down the right road. Our first decision should not be to opt in, but for the Government to bring forward the legislation on the detailed requirements for each legislation, pre-leg scrutiny, second, third, committee and final stages, and only then should we consider opting in. We've done this the wrong way round. We put the cart before the horse. And one example of this is where you have, Minister, quoted minimum numbers to enter Ireland under the solidarity mechanism, 648 per year. But that figure will be reviewed after 3 years, and we don't have to agree to an increase. That decision will be by QMV, just like the nature restoration law, where 7 countries did not support it, but it still went through. There are so many examples of this, but this is just one where we haven't had the opportunity to work through the detail and the implications. And yes, Minister, there were 6 hours in committee. I attended some of it. But while we had some presentations from NGOs and others, much of the debate centred around the gross deficiencies in the current migration system, rather than examining what, in fact, we are actually signing up to. Now, I've listened to a lot of the debate today and yesterday, and again we get so many general statements about the benefits of Europe, the benefits of migration, stories about migrants, etc. And I agree with most of it. But once again, what we need to tease out is what we are signing up to in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of regulations. And it's important to use the word regulation, because a regulation gives little or no flexibility to member states in how they operate it, because by definition a regulation must be the same in every member state, and the Commission is in charge. So, Minister, before I come to my questions on some of the details of the legislation, I do want to make the following observation. One government TD after another have told us about the bright future where the migration system will work in an efficient, timely and humane way, because we opt into this pact. But, Minister, we all know that any system will work efficiently only if the Minister grabs hold of the reins and puts the necessary systems and supports in place. Is the Government actually saying to us it will take EU regulation to force us to put better systems in place? Because that's what it sounds like to me. So my question is, what is stopping us from putting that efficient and humane system in place now? We can do that if we decide to. We can operate the current Dublin III system, not like we haven't operated it, but like our colleagues in France and Germany have done. And look, we are holding up this pact as some kind of magic bullet. But if we wanted to, we could put the pieces of the jigsaw in place over the next 6 to 12 months and operate under Dublin III. Why are we not doing that? Now, Minister, I have a number of questions. The first one relates to Denmark, who also have the opportunity to opt in, but has decided not to. We have been told if we don't opt in, we will attract more asylum seekers. But I wonder, has anybody told the Danes that? Or is this just another argument not based on fact? Is this an attempt to whip us into line? Because again, I've heard many colleagues reference the UK as an example of how bad things can be. But that makes no sense. The UK isn't in the EU, and any such comparison is spurious because the pact isn't in place. So any UK outcomes are irrelevant. So, Minister, why is it essential for us to opt in, but not for the Danes? And that brings me to my second question. If we don't opt in, like Denmark, will Dublin 3 still apply? I've looked through hundreds of pages and I haven't seen any statement where it would cease to apply. And that's really important, because if it wouldn't apply for us, it wouldn't apply for Denmark. My third question, is it possible to opt into certain parts of the pact, for example, Eurodac? I'm not asking for your opinion as to whether we should or we shouldn't. I'm simply asking you, can we? And if the answer to that is no, can you please tell me where in the pact that is made clear? My next question relates to the fact that we're in a common travel area with the UK, which is largely why we didn't opt in initially. This still stands, and you told us, Minister, that about 80% of our IP applicants came across the border this last year. So how will the Migration Pact impact on 50 to 80% of IP persons who arrive from the UK? Will we need two separate systems? Because the EU system will be set in stone, and any agreement that we reach with the UK will have to be agreed bilaterally with the UK, and I cannot see them accepting the EU migration rules. And finally, has anybody given any thought to the complicated procedures that we'll have to put in place to deal with the EU on one hand and the UK on the other? My question is, will this pact always allow us to return asylum seekers to the UK if the EU does not consider the UK a safe country? Minister, to me, what we're doing is a bit like Married at First Sight Australia, where we say yes to the proposal, then we go through the boring detail of legislating for the marriage pact, but there's one essential difference. Our discussions this evening, if we say yes, there's no divorce.
Fitzmaurice.